have open platforms in universities. If students don't like something that's being said, they can stay away. But we should recognize that that's a very minor part of it. The major part is the closing off of options for people who are critical at the dissenting side from the overwhelming consensus at the university and outside.
Science is corrupt, or rather, it's become corrupt because it's owned. It's not a free system of inquiry anymore, if it ever was, because scientists are owned by corporations. And corporations, the people who control the scientists, the people who control science, have a specific outcome, a specific conclusion in mind. And so they pay people to get that conclusion. So we're not getting the real answers because science is owned by the elites, and we're not getting the genuine truth because science is controlled by money and power.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Hi, Kristine, and everybody out there. I hope that you liked the video. It was a good intro. And hi, Carl Mom and Gary Ballard and Scott Andrews, and I love to say hi to everybody. Hi, Rich Diana. Hello, and Raza, of course, from the UK. We have a worldwide audience. Kristine, as always, and Kim Centeno. I always say her name wrong. Is our mod, and she's the best mod ever. And Kevin Stanholder and Tom Hall. So the crowd's all here. Yay! Yes. This is awesome, Kristine. So what you been up to?
Oh my God, nothing at all, really.
Well, I can't say that. I've been up to a lot, but that was, at least today, was creative juices running, and it was because of you. Because I got inspired this morning, everybody, and I'm going to show you Kristine's Twitter, and I'm going to show you what inspired me this morning was Kristine saying 1,000 times this, and it was the Bioscience Resource Project, and they said, if we want to revive the spirit of liberalism and adapt it to a technocratic era, it will require a similarly skeptical form of science journalism based on the recognition that appeals to science have become the basic idiom for the exercise of authority. So when I read that, I saw the rest of the article, and that was this one by Unheard, and I have seen stuff that they've done before. And you have too, Kristine?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, they're good. Their interviews are good. I feel terrible. I forgot the main guy's name, but he's pretty pretty on target. And hello, Real Eyes. Hi. Real Eyes, Real Eyes, Real Eyes, and his wife, I hope, will be house sitting for me in August when I come and see you, because I'm going to see you on the way back. Yes, yes, yes. So
Can I say, speaking
you
of
can say whatever
the
you
tweet
want.
I put out, the Bioscience Resource Project runs independent science news. And the two of them are two scientists who, like me, would be probably thought of as dissident scientists. And they try to get out, I don't want to say necessarily contrarian views, because I don't think any of us scientists who are sort of dissidents are trying to be contrarian. We are just trying to tell the truth. And the truth isn't really told so much in academia anymore, if it ever was. I mean, you have to think about where academia came from. But so they really run a good operation with independent science news. And a really, they're both, one of them I think is a virologist and one of them is a geneticist, or along those lines, cellular and molecular biology, that kind of realm. But they are the ones who I initially found this article through, and I would urge people to follow them.
Cool. And I must have the link in the show notes. And if I don't, I definitely will add them, because there's always a little few things that may not be in there. But it was a good one this morning. So I thought what we could do, Kristine, is kind of tag team it so everybody understands. Well, even if we don't read the whole thing, we could tag team it, and I could start, and then you can, we'll go back and forth, kind of like what me and Jennifer do, because I have tons of articles, but we're not going to go through them all. This is the main one. And if everybody's ready, let's go. So, the idea that SARS-CoV-2 was engineered in a laboratory and then escaped accidentally has always been at a certain plausibility. The virus first appeared in Wuhan, China, like we all know, right? Where there is a laboratory that conducts research on bat coronaviruses, one of only a handful in the world to do so. Yet this possibility was dismissed quite forcefully and from beginning of the outbreak by prominent virologists. So now that the same lab leak hypothesis appears to be on the verge of acceptance as the most likely, right? Such reversals happen. It's the nature of science. In an emergency, it is understandable that a research community might commit to one theory over another, even if prematurely, in order to focus its intellectual energies and resources. So surely that's what happened here. You want to pick it up?
But there may be more to the story.
Yeah.
On May 2nd, the veteran science reporter Nicholas Wade published a long, detailed account of the career of the lab leak hypothesis. His reporting appears to have triggered a cascade of deflections, not simply from a consensus that no longer holds, but from a fake consensus that is no longer enforceable. Now, 18 scientists signed a letter in the journal Science with the title, "Investigate the Origins of COVID-19." The New York Times notes that many of the signers have not spoken out before. Speaking out is an odd locution to use in scientific context. One expects to find it in a story about a whistleblower. If during the COVID fiasco, scientists have not felt free to speak their minds, then we have a serious problem that goes beyond the immediate emergency of the pandemic. Regardless of how the question of the virus's origin is ultimately decided, we need to understand how the political drama surrounding the science played out if we are to learn anything from this pandemic and reduce the likelihood of future ones.
Okay, so by now, and this is a really good video. This is the host, and you have to go to his channel. I don't know if I have it pulled up, but by now, the reader will have heard of gain of function research. And I'll just do a little aside really quick. I have been following Peak Prosperity, Chris Martinson. And so I learned all about gain of function research from him, and so it was very interesting following this whole year. You know, I don't know, Kristine, if I committed one way or another. I probably lean towards the bat deal, because I'm very uncomfortable with total out there stuff, but it nagged at me because it wasn't totally out there, because there are mistakes get made, right? I mean, they do. All right, let's go on. So where was I? All right, so guys, here we are. A large number of scientists came together in July 2014 as the Cambridge Working Group to urge that experiments involving the creation of potential pandemic pathogens should be curtailed until there has been a quantitative, objective, and credible assessment of the risks, potential benefits, and opportunities for risk mitigation, as well as comparison against safer experimental approaches. So later in 2014, the Obama administration issued a moratorium on just that type of research, partly in response to some biosafety accidents at, federal research facilities. All right, take it away. Ba-boom.
But before the ban went into effect, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases funded some gain-of-function research, which, through an intermediary, nonprofit, and subcontracting arrangement, came to be conducted at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The moratorium was lifted during the Trump administration, apparently at the urging of Anthony Fauci, and a 2019 renewal of the 2014 research grant did include gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses. SARS-CoV-2 exhibits biological signatures consistent with the plan of research laid out in the grant. Doing such research requires extreme safety precautions, and these make it very cumbersome to do the work. You have to wear what is essentially a spacesuit, and every task is burdened with procedures that slow the work down dramatically. Meanwhile, scientists are competing with one another to publish first.
Okay, so as Wade notes, researchers have an incentive to carry the work out under less restrictive safety standards, and therefore to downplay the risks when applying for grants. So, and indeed, the work at Wuhan was not conducted at the highest safety standard. In this, there may have been a subtle form of collusion. There is no need to posit a conspiracy. One need only take note of the shared incentives. It is other members of the Guild who conduct the review process that decides the allocation of research funds, and they are unlikely to insist upon a more stringent safety standard. It would have to apply it to themselves as well. Research communities have internal competition, but also collective interests. Wade points out that the consensus that COVID must have an entirely natural origin was established by two early pronouncements, one in The Lancet in February 2020 and the other in Nature Medicine in March 2020. These were op-eds, not scientific papers, but both spoke with certainty about matters which it was impossible to be certain about. Wade writes, it later turned out that The Lancet had been organized, that letter had been organized and drafted by that infamous Peter Daszak, president of the EcoHealth Alliance of New York. Figures it's New York. It was just like, it figures it has to be something to do with New York, and both Kristine and I are in New York. I
can tell you a little bit about, I don't want to say I have a connection to that, but it's really weird when this all came about. Do you want to keep going, or should we talk about it?
I like your little story, and everybody knows this. We can move down, but we could probably go. But let's hear your story.
Well, interestingly enough, sometime in the past 5 or 10 years, I was looking at the EcoHealth Alliance because the truth is my background is broadly in interdisciplinary environmental science, but I mainly studied risks, scientific risk, scientific communication involving environmental health. So when I heard of the EcoHealth Alliance, I thought that might be a good place to find a job.
Oh, look at that.
So I was looking at what they did, and from the title, it wasn't what I expected at all. When I think of EcoHealth, I think of preventing the use of chemicals that needlessly are used, or curbing the use of pesticides, or, reducing consumption, and just taking out these toxic substances in our environment to produce, better health for us and for other organisms.
Sounds about right.
When I looked at this organization, they were, so my research that I've done was more social science of science. And they were more into hard science research that I hadn't conducted. So I realized it wasn't for me, but I wasn't quite sure exactly what they were doing and how that involved health. And it wasn't until I looked into this gain of function research, and I suppose we probably should explain what it is to your viewers if people don't know what it is.
Go for it.
So what it really is it's trying to prevent, well, supposedly trying to prevent pandemics, because we knew this kind of stuff was going to happen, whether it be bacterial pandemics or viral or fungal, all of which may come for many reasons because of what we've done to our environment, because of human ecological overshoot. But so what Peter Daszak and what the Wuhan lab does and what the EcoHealth Alliance does apparently is this gain of function research where they take viruses and they genetically manipulate the viral RNA or DNA, usually it's RNA, to make the virus more virulent, for the supposed idea that if we can create these virulent or contagious viruses that are likely to infect people, then we can figure out a way to undo it. But the truth is, the way viruses mutate is not the way they're going, like the manipulation that humans do isn't going to happen the same way viruses mutate.
Not at all.
Mutations are random. Mutations don't happen in a particular way, they're random. So a virus isn't going to all of a sudden do all the perfect things to make it more virulent and make it more contagious. And so what these people are doing with gain of function research is actually making viruses that probably wouldn't even occur.
Right. I heard all of this. Oh my God.
Yeah. So,
It's
I mean,
spooky.
the truth is, and they're not coming up with a solution to them necessarily. They're just creating them. So really, it's like a lot of research to me. It's research that shouldn't be done, has no need to be done, and we need to stop it immediately. That moratorium should have stayed forever.
Forever. And I'll tell you, Kristine, if I was still in the biz and I was a research administrator and that came across my desk, I think I would have been a little bit noisy about maybe let's look at this a little closer. But it's hard. Sometimes that's really hard because nobody wants to hear you, even if the upper echelon, because those research dollars, if it's an institution, you're tied to the overhead. You're getting the institution's getting big bucks to run their school. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is part of the problem with science. You're not getting money if you're going to say, we're going to look at how to prevent these viruses and how to, maybe not close down those wet markets in China, but to make our food systems more secure, more local even. The best thing we could do is tear up the industrial food system and make local food systems for everyone around the world. And guess what? You know what? If this virus did come from a wet market, well, we could do something about that doesn't impinge upon people's cultures and is good for the environment. But there's no money in these things because these things are kind of taking away. They're not doing all this technological mumbo jumbo and, fun stuff that the boys with toys like to do. Truthfully, when I found out about this lab and the gain of function research going on there,
right,
I thought, well, evolutionary biologists always say in terms of evolution, because we don't know all the pieces of evolution in biology. So we say we use Occam's razor, the rule of parsimony, meaning the straightest straightest line is the right one between 2 points. So the most likely explanation for this virus to end up in Wuhan when they're doing this research in Wuhan and creating potentially really risky viruses in the Wuhan lab, one of the most highly secure labs in the not in the nation of China, in the globe. I can't remember what they call these, high risk labs, but they have what is it, BL1 or something?
The apocalypse lab?
Kind of.
Yeah.
But in any case, the shortest distance between 2 points is a line. Occam's razor, the rule of parsimony would say this did come from a lab. The intermediary, when they were saying it was a pangolin, or when they were saying it came from a bat to a pangolin to a human, they haven't found that intermediary.
No, not
they
at
haven't
all.
found evidence of it. But there is evidence, and there's many people, like I said, at the Bioscience Research Project, they were talking about this, and I'm actually trying to look, because I've been following this, and there's another woman who I think is from Harvard, a researcher who's been following this and who put out the idea of the lab leak way early on and has been getting a lot of grief from it. But she's a virologist and she knows about this.
Yep, I remember her. I think I might have had something included. I'm not sure if it was this one.
Alina Chan.
Okay.
Alina Chan is her
sounds
name.
Really familiar.
She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard. So, so this is, the thing about making this lab leak hypothesis into a conspiracy theory was all about politics and all about Trump.
Oh my God. Of course it was. There's just, yeah, it was.
And it's just, I think so much over this year has really shown, it should have shown people what science is and what it's not. And it doesn't mean that science is necessarily bad. It doesn't mean that science isn't valuable. I'm a scientist. That's what I've trained in my whole life. And I love biology and I love chemistry and I love, nature and I love the environment. But the practice of science as we do it, the practice of research, the institution of academia is, it's not without major flaws and corruption. And that corruption can be overt and it can be purposeful, or it can be just by design, by people who are just kind of doing what they need to do to have a career.
In other words, though, academia. Sorry. I think we had a little.
No, it's fine.
I just want academia, federal, if federal schools, state schools, they are just, some of them are as big as cities. They're getting their funding. It's just, they're just corporations under a different guise.
That's what I was just going to say. And they are run exactly like corporations.
Except with the provost.
Right. And it means that, there's a lot of good people there, but I'll tell you this anecdote. When I gave a talk about 5 or 6 years ago about environmental risk, I asked people in the audience, and it was a small audience, maybe 80 to 100 people, and I'd say 75% of them were students, 25% of them were professors or adults. I said, how many of you have had to censor yourself in your job? And there was, or how many of you haven't? How many of you haven't had to censor yourself? And, how many of you could speak the truth freely in your job? And one person in the room raised their hand. And I was like, really?
Wow.
You are lucky. You are lucky. But the truth is, we all know if we are going to work in this world, you're not going to have a career if you tell the truth. And in almost every job, and especially as you go up to the higher echelons and the more elite positions.
Yeah.
So the people who get up there are the people who have no problem censoring themselves and not speaking the truth. And that's why you find the people who are speaking the truth are not in those positions. And if you're really searching for the truth, you're not going to get it from these scientists who've reached the pinnacle of their career.
The PIs.
And if they if they are at that pinnacle and they haven't been censoring themselves, then they're really not I hate to say it, but they're really not doing anything that is really critical in the time we're living. Because everything that's critical to save our planet right now, to keep us healthy, to keep the world healthy, it's all very controversial because all the things we need to do run counter to the dominant paradigms of capitalism and the corporate structure. So,
Bingo.
yeah.
Bingo,
So,
bingo, bingo. And bingo again. Well,
so I mean, this lab leak thing speaks to what's going on in science. That what's being sold as science is often extremely political. It's not exact. It's not some beautifully perfect discipline that has all the answers to you. And it's been driving me crazy over the past few years when everybody says, follow the science, or I believe in science. If you're saying that, then you really don't know what science is.
right. Right. Well, I've said it a million times. Follow the science, follow the science. I don't know if I said I believe, but follow the science because, well, at least during the Trump years, what the fuck else were you going to follow? I mean, if you didn't follow science, you were following the cacistocracy. We are a cacistocracy. We are led by idiots and morons. And that's just that it's not changed that much. It's just we have a more intelligent or a more decorum around the presidency now. There's respect and decorum. We don't have a buffoon standing up there and making idiotic jokes and just making everybody mad. But
we have the air of decorum, but behind it is the same old stuff.
It
pretty
seems.
much.
It seems.
But in terms of following the science, what I mean is that science is highly uncertain. It's highly politicized.
Now.
It's highly corporatized. And so if you're following the science, it doesn't mean you're finding the truth. It doesn't mean that you're getting towards the answers that we need to save our planet or save ourselves. It means you're trying to be on a particular team, really, because no one wants to just follow magical thinking. But when you get too much into believing that everything that comes out of academic institutions is perfect science, then you're in a different realm of magical thinking.
Yeah. You're right. They're having a talk in there about who's vaxxed and not. I'm fully vaxxed and I'm still here. So I am vaxxed. I'm alive, guys. I bought into it. Oh my God. Listen, I figured at my age, if it is some sinister shit planted in me, who cares? And how long is it? I mean, really, it didn't really, it doesn't faze me. But what phases me, what gets me is when, I'll show you. We'll go back to that article really quickly because you nailed it right there with when the letter from Science calling for the investigation concluded by rejecting, anti-Asian sentiment. Clearly, this thought was necessary when the lab leak hypothesis had been mentioned at all in the legacy press. The conspiracy has often been juxtaposed with reporting on anti-Haitian hate crimes, thereby subsuming an urgent scientific question to the Trump era morality play. And they talked about the journalism suffering an intellectual collapse, but there was another. Where was it?
I want to say that was the really problematic thing, was that Trump, kept calling it the China virus.
Ugh.
And so the lab leak would make it seem like it was something nefarious from China. But the truth is, this Wuhan lab is an international lab. I know I read somewhere that I believe 50% or more of the funding came from the United States. So if it did leak from the lab, and personally, I think that is more likely than it
seems so now.
coming. I've always thought it was more likely, but it doesn't mean it has anything to do with China. It means it has to do with what we are all doing globally in research, all of this risky research, that we have to wonder why we are doing it. It's there's so much that is ethical that is not being considered. And this, as you said, this research is because of the money. But if you think of it ethically, it's research that doesn't need to be done. It's not research that's going to give us any clues as to what to do for a pandemic, and very likely it could have caused this pandemic. And of course, we don't want to find out that that's the case, because then it will really be problematic with people not trusting science. But the truth is, the more you lie about what's going on, the more people don't trust science.
It's tough for those that, well, our little community on Twitter and the climate scientists who share the graphs and all, and they are showing the way. They are. And if they are, I guess there's those scientists that do have to keep their opinions on what they're seeing to themselves and just talk about the science.
I don't agree with that at all, and I think that's the big problem, honestly.
And they're educated opinions. These are not just opinions. These are what they've learned.
Exactly, and that's who should be giving their opinions. Why should we have scientists who are supposed to be objective? Which scientists are not? I'm going to go deep into the sociology of science. We can pretend scientists are objective, but they're not. They may be objective, and I certainly hope I was always objective in all my research. You want to gather data in an objective way so that you're not gathering and cherry picking to get to a certain outcome. But you're not objective because you choose to study something and you choose to look at that thing in a certain way. And when you get the data, you come to a specific conclusion, and all of that comes from your background. All of that comes from your social beliefs and your cultural beliefs. So the idea of total objectivity in science is not true. So, and as you said, the truth is that scientists who are studying this stuff should be the ones who can have their opinions on it because they know it more than other people. That doesn't mean their opinions are necessarily going to be correct. It doesn't mean other people can't see the same data that these scientists have come up with and say, you know what, I don't agree with your conclusion, and have a really valid reason for not agreeing with what those data show. But this idea that scientists shouldn't have an opinion, that has been constructed, and I think it's constructed specifically so that we can't move forward and we can't really get to questioning all of the stuff that we have come to view as normal. I don't think that's something that's inherent and has to be inherent in science. I think it was something that was constructed when we constructed all of these institutions.
Construct everything. Yeah, we could, like Semi Oguzkin, the technology, everything novel. You make something novel, but then you have to make more novel to fix the problems from the other technology. It's like the same thing in building bigger and better and more. It's just the way it's always been. I do have a comment from Gregory Koyanagi. Gregory, I hope I'm saying this right. Koyanagi. You need to preface this with American scientists. Can you, what you were saying, that it's American scientists that aren't saying it. Maybe that there's scientists from other countries that are able to talk. Certainly not Chinese scientists. No.
I'm not so sure about that. I don't think scientists are very much able to talk about. I mean, I've worked with scientists. I know scientists who are in academia. I know a lot, like myself and others, who are not, because we advocate for certain things and we show our opinions and we use our knowledge to be activists in certain realms, because I feel like at this point in our global international history of humanity, we must, Yeah. But I don't think there may be some scientists who speak out, but I don't think it's about having strings either. Yeah, Gregory's saying that has 90%. No strings whatsoever. I don't know if it's about necessarily having strings. I think there is I'll put it this way. In Manufacturing Consent, Chomsky and Herman and Chomsky wrote Manufacturing Consent, and it's about the way people self-censor in journalism. They're not able to say everything they want to say, and they become part of the journalistic institution. And so they don't even realize they're censoring themselves. They don't even realize that they're putting parameters on their discourse, because it just becomes normalized. And this is what you can talk about. This is what you can't talk about. This is the way I'll frame my article. This is the way I'll frame this story. It just becomes normalized in their way of writing. Well, you know what? That's exactly what happens in academia and scientific research.
Self-edits.
It's the same, but even what's chosen to be studied, the way you look at issues, it's all part of being part of that institution, being part of our first world culture, all of that stuff. And so people who don't kind of buy into our culture anymore, people who don't buy into, say, the hierarchy, or don't buy into how institutions work, don't buy into capitalism, they're going to look at things differently, and most likely they're not going to be able to perform as professors or scientists or researchers because of that.
No, and that's why they come on my show.
So the thing is, it's not about where your funding comes from necessarily, because that the funding can make it overtly corrupt. But there's these other things that are, it's not corruption, but it's just, it's sort of institutional capture. You kind of see things the way everybody else sees them, and you do things the way they're done because that's the way they're supposed to be done.
Well, we have a good comment, Kristine. Hoople's Cat has a channel. He's a wonderful guy. I follow him and his wife, and he is like high up, like a nurse in a hospital, but he's not just a nurse. He's like an executive, but he is an amazing commentator. And he says, China said airborne. For months, our scientists said no and don't use masks. That was political, not scientific. And it wasn't months.
You mean when Fauci said not to use masks?
Well, maybe it was, but Hooples has done many videos. I watched him and followed. I learned how to clean my mask. I mean, he taught us how to clean our masks. He's got a great channel. He does. He's wonderful. But Hunter said back, 100% Hoople's Cat. Oh my gosh.
So much. I mean, everything that's come out during this pandemic has been political rather than scientific.
It is. It should have just been, we have a problem. We're going to fix it. And I don't know, if it wasn't Trump, would it have been politicized like this? I mean, HIV was politicized to a degree when they found out it was gays, and then risky behavior. And then it was, I think nobody gave a shit except for those of us that were engaging in risky behavior, or whatever we might have been doing back then. And, but it certainly wasn't, I don't think it was politicized to this degree. I don't remember anything being politicized to this degree, particular degree.
And it's still being politicized because this push for vaccines, we're making it, we're all in this together and we're going to help each other. And the truth is that it's not about helping each other. It's about getting back to normal and exactly. It's all economics.
Because they didn't make it open source so other, countries and other labs could replicate this and really make it effective. They made it a money-making opportunity like every other freaking oligarch. And the minute they saw the opportunities from this virus, all of them pounced on anything they could possibly get to make off it.
But beyond that, people staying home and, all of this stuff closing down, none of this had to be the way it was. Easily, we could have forget unemployment insurance, forget the handouts to the corporations. The only thing we needed to do was give people money to stay afloat. And our essential workers, unfortunately, had to keep working, and we could have kept them so much more protected if we had everybody have their basic needs seen to.
Sure.
That's all we needed to do. But we cannot do that in our capitalist society. We've never done that. The United States never does that, and we're tired of giving anybody anything, except, of course, we keep handing out to the rich people because we give the rich everything.
Oh, and we give military money and arms and weapons to
Right,
all these different countries.
and trillions to the military to, keep our oligarchy and our imperialism going and kill people all over the world. But yeah, I mean, we need to get people back to work. And it's not because people need to survive. We don't care about, we, meaning our government,
of course,
we don't care about people surviving. If we did, we wouldn't live in the country we live in where like 50% or more of people are poor or, living paycheck to paycheck.
Or you have to walk over people, homeless people, in rich cities like San Francisco.
Yeah, well, everywhere. No one can afford housing anymore. I mean, we don't care about any of this as inequality grows. Massively it grew. What we care about is getting the economy up and running so those oligarchs can keep making more. Always. And that's why we have the mass vaccination program. That's why we're doing all this. We got to get, and beyond that, we got to get everybody back to the entertainment, to the sports, to the race cars, to all of this stuff that is all of the problem that's, exacerbating climate change, exacerbating our resource use, contributing to our ecological collapse. That's what we're all going back to. And that's what this mass vaccination has all been about. We really don't care about people. It may sound cruel and cynical, but everything I've seen in my whole life shows me that we don't care about people.
And you have a worldview, and I respect it, and I'm happy to have you here with me telling everybody the worldview, because a lot of our followers and everybody in the chat feel the same. And so we're having a very nice conversation with a bunch of people that love us, Kristine, because we love them. Do you mind if I segue a little bit to the second article and just look at the one here? I'm going to read this, and then we'll go a little bit more. We might have covered, but what would it mean if the lab leak hypothesis was correct? Now, the result would be uncomfortable, not just for the Chinese Communist Party, who's been lying, or it's not that they're lying their ass off. Their scientists can't tell the truth at all. The result would be, all right, they would be guilty of overseeing arguably the biggest cover-up in history of an event that caused economic chaos, millions of deaths and misery around the world. It would shake science to its foundation for carrying out risky research despite clear warnings of the dangers, and then collaborating in an epic whitewash. And then it would challenge a media that meekly accepted the establishment view rather than doing its job of asking the difficult questions. A failure even more serious than the Iraq War intelligence debacle. Indeed, much of science and the media already look sadly tainted by their failures on this front, regardless of the outcome. So, do you have a comment maybe on that?
I think we need all of that. The fact is that, we are carrying out risky research all the time. I've talked to people. I remember 10, 15 years ago talking to someone who was doing research on Drosophila flies, which is, that's the typical fly used for genetic research. And I can't remember what exactly they were doing to these flies. Some kind of genetic research, probably not this new CRISPR technology, but the old genetic engineering research on these flies. And I said, I was talking to him about it, and I said, how do you keep these flies, these little tiny fruit flies contained in your lab after you, manipulate the genes and engineer them for whatever you're engineering to test or look at? And he said, well, basically it was like, well, we can't. We have this way of doing things, but it's so sloppy. And yeah, if I have so many friends who've worked in science. I've worked in science. I know how sloppy it can be. We pretend it's so pristine. It is not pristine. And doing this risky stuff, we have to start we have to start thinking about what can we do versus what should we do. It's such a simple ethical concept, but we never do it because it's always about the money. And
And it wasn't this all brought under the guise of oh, it's beneficial for military research,
the gain of
military
function
research.
research,
Yeah, military research, my
that
ass.
I
Right?
don't
I
know,
think
but
it's
yeah,
disgusting.
military is often doing the research
Blah.
for a lot of, yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah,
Who
so
was somebody had
I just
some?
think we have to, I would love it if the public realized how much risky research is going on in science. I I think we've been doing a lot of things that are already contributing to our our I don't what would I say? We have just a huge epidemic of degenerative diseases and chronic diseases in this culture. And I think there's so much of that coming from science, from technologies we've created, from research we're doing. Not necessarily this kind of research, but so much of scientific technology and sort of progress, the chemicals we've created, the Wi-Fi we've created, all these new technologies in our lives. I think that is where a huge amount of our chronic, degenerative, neurological, autoimmune, all of these diseases are coming
Yes,
from. And I
totally.
think, this lab, if this was a lab leak from Wuhan, which it can very well be, and I'm glad that I can say that now without being like
Feeling
in
creepy,
the
like somebody's.
1%. Now
Yeah.
I'm more in the 50%, but it's just duh.
Well, hell
but
yeah, the New York Times
but
has it. It's
but
right
if you
here.
think this is the first of all, if you think this is the first time it's happened, we already know that viruses, manipulated viruses, have leaked and have caused diseases. Not a global pandemic, but it's already happened. I can't remember the specific ones. I wish I had written it down before our talk, but it's out there, and I can find the
Sure.
articles that say that this is not new, and other things that we have created as scientists or scientific technologists, things have come out that have been detrimental to us. And we don't even know how detrimental they've been if they're not acute. We only see it when it's acute and it kills
Yeah.
us or it makes people real sick. But we forget that there's things out there that are causing illness that's much more subtle, you know?
Like I
So
have.
I
I
really
have
think
autoimmunes.
there you
They're
go.
annoying.
There you go. And I'm
That's
telling
why
you,
my
that's not,
glands are always swollen. This is
you didn't
actually
inherit that. It's not
no,
some genetic defect that you inherited that all of your
no.
ancestors had.
I think
No.
it's working 20
Mm-hmm.
years in a sick office at the university, having to
It could
fight for
very
an
well
air
be, yeah.
purifier. We were in the basement. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure it was. I'm sure it was. But, I can't get rid of it. It's just, I live with it. So that's it. I had
So I
something.
mean, I think to find out that this leaked from a lab in many ways could be a good thing, that we could say, look, we've got to
Pleaded.
start really thinking about what we're doing and just
Hell yeah.
stop. I mean, this is what we need to tackle climate change, to tackle and I hate talking about simply climate change because it's more about just our total ecological
Everything.
overshoot.
Ooh, the
But
big story.
but that's what we need. I mean, gain of function research, do we have to do that? No. Is it mainly for economics? Yes. So we need to stop it. And we need to think about that with everything we do. Do we have to do that? Well, if we don't, if it's potentially risky, then maybe we need to stop doing it.
Well,
I
what I
want to,
think?
yeah.
I think that gain of research, that gain of function research, that gets the environmental coffee house flush of the day. We are gonna flush away that shit and get rid of it. Yes, that definitely gets the flush of a day. Now you can continue.
Sorry, I'm just going off, but I want to
Oh, I
mention,
love it. I just had to get that flush in there for gain of function research.
yes,
There you go.
the European environmental, gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it. It's a European environmental organization, and that might just be what it's called, the European Environmental Organization. They've come out with two huge papers about risks outweighing their benefits, basically. Things we've put out into the world without using the precautionary principle, saying that, oh, it's okay, finding out it wasn't okay after all. And I should, maybe I'll tweet them out or something, but these are really important studies, and they list all of these different things, from thalidomide to DDT, all these things that we said were going to make our lives better. And we said, we didn't use the precaution we should have used. And I think that's what we're seeing now. We need the precautionary principle, honestly. We've needed it.
Things.
And maybe this will get people to understand what the precautionary principle is and how important it is for our lives. And maybe that's something that we can push for again. I mean, in 1998, there was a push for the precautionary principle, and it was pushed out of discourse by right-wing think tanks. And it's actually part of the study I did for my master's degree. And I can tell you the one person who really, from the Hoover Institution, who really pushed it out of discourse. But if we find out for sure this was from the Wuhan lab, maybe that's something that we can bring back.
Well, yeah, it's all going to be a learning experience. It has to be. I mean, these things happen in labs. I remember, and this is silly, but we had the Great Lakes lab, and they had a whole big elaborate system to keep their trout, for the research on the trout, on benzoapyrene that was in Lake Erie and all. And I remember Dr. Siddiqui, I think it was Dr. Siddiqui, or maybe it was, it might have been Dr. Honey, Sangeet Honey. Oh God, he was so cute. From India, we had a lot of fun. He was cool. We took him out a lot, and he would always sit there, drink soda, and go, "Oh my God!" But he killed all the trout. Something happened, and he killed all the trout. This stuff happens. So whatever, but they just happen to be doing really. It's not that it was nefarious, that it was let out on purpose to infect the world and kill us. I think it was an accident, a stupid one on research that can be classified as maybe a little nefarious. Maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's necessarily nefarious. I think it's just unnecessary. Yeah. So what? We create a virus that probably wouldn't ever create itself in real life. Yep. And what do we do then? Well, we risk having it leak, which may have happened. I really doubt that this was something that was nefarious and put out there by anyone. But I don't doubt that it could have been accidental, because, as you said, accidents happen all the time.
Oh, they sure do.
When you look at all of the things like Chernobyl and the Exxon Valdez disaster and the Gulf oil spill, most of these things weren't necessarily because of technology itself going wrong. It's mostly because humans have to deal with this stuff, and humans make mistakes. And that's the problem with this technology too, is that not necessarily that the technology goes awry, but that humans can make a mistake, and it could lead to disaster. And that's probably or partially what could have happened.
It makes sense. I was looking, and I want to pull something else up that might give us some something to chew on. This is the actual article that started the whole thing. It was the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, and it was Nicholas Wade. He's the one that brought it up. It was May 5th, right? And I think that's when everybody else jumped on the bandwagon. He was talking about the molecular biology of viruses, but I want to go down. He talks about the tale of two theories, and exactly what you've been saying. How could it have happened? But here, Wuhan, however, is the home of that Institute of Virology, the leading world center for research on coronaviruses. So, how could an accident have been avoided? And also another thing, if the the Chinese government doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to release information about it because they want to save face or for whatever reason, how do we find the answers? How do we find the truth?
And I wouldn't say it's only the Chinese government covering up, because the WHO
no.
under Peter
Yeah,
Daszak,
they're right in with it.
they were, the guy who was running this gain of function research from the EcoHealth Alliance, he was part of the WHO team to check up on the potential lab leak, and the WHO team that decided that it wasn't a lab leak. I mean, the conflicts of interest are just unbelievable. How do we find out that? I don't know. How do we trace this with all the different parts and all of the potential cover up?
Can we trust?
And, I don't really trust much. But
because I read about the investigation is being led by the same, at least the United States investigation is being led by the same olds who investigated 9/11. The same. I mean, people who are trained to have investigations come out in certain ways, I suppose. Yes. And I'm usually not so pessimistic, but its experience is just certainly bringing us to that
and they're
conclusion.
Bringing in the intelligence community.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but if you trust the intelligence community, then you really don't know anything about American history or the history of the world.
No.
And I'm not a big historian myself, but come on. You don't trust the intelligence community. They're there to obfuscate. I do wonder why Biden is bringing this up again, though. And I can only wonder.
It's politically expedient. I mean, if it's brought up in the New York Times and people are starting to talk about it, it's obvious that it's a political thing.
Why is it expedient? Is it because they're going to do a full investigation and then say, we know for sure it didn't leak out of the lab? Is it a foregone conclusion? I mean, unless it's to blame China.
That's what Carl Mumm says. He wants to pile on China.
That's what I'm wondering. If that's to give cause.
Hoop says Biden's getting support from the right. That's why. Wow. Wow.
I don't know the exact political reason for it, but I know there is one.
No. Well, I'm sure we will be seeing this, and possibly, we will come back. Kristine, we're almost an hour, and I think I had showed everybody all of the articles I had pulled up. There is a plethora of stuff out there, from mainstream to completely not mainstream. Everybody's got their finger in this one, and that's why we're here tonight. Kristine inspired me, and I ran with it, and completely. So we've got quite a nice audience. Kristine, I would love for you to kind of give us the wrap up of this conversation. What is it that you really want everybody to know? Because it really was you that inspired me. Carl said maybe Kristine should just write an article on it. Just saying. Well, thank you, Carl, for your input. Maybe you have some pull with her.
I think, this knee-jerk reaction that everything's a conspiracy theory, I think is really there to keep us from questioning anything. And I think, you don't want to go into realms of making stuff up just because you want to be contrarian. But I think a healthy dose of skepticism for anything people in power have to say that is affecting our lives is probably a good thing. And I think that's what, when this first came out and or some of us found out there was this lab doing this research, in all places in Wuhan, China, the first thought should be, it shouldn't be like this is a conspiracy theory. No, it should be, that's a weird coincidence. So let us think about what that could mean. It doesn't mean we have to go anywhere yet. Let's get information. But I think that's what people need to remember. we don't need to jump to conclusions, but we need to get information, and we need to think about what the people in power are telling us and why.
That makes sense. What the people in power are telling us and why. We could do another hour on that.
Yeah.
And through history, what people told us. I mean, we've been fed spoon-fed well, that's every civilization. Spoon feeds their populace with garbage. That's how they get them they brainwash them. It's been psychological
Right.
warfare against citizens of every single civilization. They just
And
didn't
who
know
benefits?
who benefits. It's always the wealthy. Always the wealthy. Always the wealthy. It's a human trait. And again, we are in overshoot, and they don't care. And I think it's today. What did I see? The Koch brothers and that lovely ilk. They're just or oh no, was it Rupert Murdoch? It was somebody. They're dismissing climate change and say, well, we're going to adapt. They're just putting all their eggs in the we're going to adapt basket, because they cannot absolutely even fathom that something will happen to their empire. Even if they're building wherever they're building, some bunker somewhere. They just can't.
Yeah.
And Nostradamus says, then we are enslaved. Well, what do you think?
We are
I mean, that's
enslaved.
what all these, we just don't call it that, but it's, we are wage slaves in this country.
It made me feel better. I think I read a quotation not long ago that James Baldwin, I believe it was him, who because I don't like to say we are enslaved, because I think it sort of denigrates those who were really enslaved.
Yeah.
But when James Baldwin came out and said what we are going through as wage slaves, maybe it wasn't him, but I'll find that out. I thought, well, it's true, and I can say it now because I'm not a person of color, and my ancestors, as far as I know, weren't enslaved. But if someone like him can say it, we are enslaved, and I mean, this pandemic showed us the oligarchy made out like bandits, and more of us. If the suffering wasn't bad enough, and the ecological breakdown wasn't bad enough, it's only been so far exacerbated.
That was that's a great way to bring us up to the ending. This has been great. I feel we had a great flow. I love this, and I hope everybody else does. And Kristine, would you like to join us for more of this with the rest of the team, and maybe just have your face up there with the rest of us?
I would love to. Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope I didn't monopolize the discussion, but I'm so passionate about
it's beautiful.
all the problems in science, and I really want people to know that we can't just say follow the science, because it's much more complicated than that. That doesn't mean science is bad, but it means it's complicated.
Well, I've evolved in my thinking there too. I certainly have, because I could see how I was resistant and rigid and not wanting to take the walk on the wild side, because I didn't want to be associated. I made a video called, what was it? Pandemic, Plandemic, Scandemic. And I went through Judy Mikovich's stuff, and I did a whole thing. And I tried not to opinionate too much, just present the facts that were out there. But I have certainly grown and learned through this, and people like you have helped me, so I want to say thank you for that. And thank you everybody else. Yes, Poppy, yay, Kristine is coming back. Yep, she is. Anybody have any last questions before we hit the hour mark? I don't know, me and Jennifer can never be, it's always an hour 7, an hour 9, and it is tough to get people to not want to keep going, because we enjoy this, and so does everybody else. Thank you, Dolores, and thank you. Dolores is wonderful. She shares for us on Facebook, and I really do appreciate Dolores, and I appreciate Kim. And Hunter, I made you a mod to work with Kim, because you had talked to me about wanting to help out, so I can't always get to the comment sections of everything right now, so thank you, everyone. All right. I think what we're going to end with, Kristine, again, thank you. We'll do this again. And why don't we end? I don't know if everybody saw the starting video. We'll just end with the starting video. And good night. Jeremy Jimenez. Good night, Jeremy. Wait, what did he say? What will happen first? Societal collapse or Kristine giving up? Wait. I know Jeremy. He's wonderful in real life. He works in university.
Yes,
you know him. He's academic too. Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And he's in New York. You know, Kristine, you got to get up to us. You got to take a vacation somehow so you can get up here and hang out with this community we've got up here. It's really cool. And you.
By the way, Jeremy, I can't give up trying to prevent it. I think it's probably hopeless, my trying, but it's all there is, right? I mean,
that's right.
It's true. What will happen first? Well, I guess I'll keep trying. It'll probably happen and I'll just keep trying. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah. And I'll keep talking about
Shout out to the people at Thacker Pass, as I always want to say.
Yes, Max Wilbert.
They are really trying. Yeah.
These people are amazing. I give them a lot too. I just love them. I loved interviewing Max, and I would love to have any one of them back on. All right, guys. Peace out. I'm going to play the intro video for those of you who didn't see it. And we love you. And thank you, anybody, all of you, whoever donates to Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you. It might get Kristine a webcam. We'll see. All right, guys. Nighty night.
We should really have open platforms in universities. If students don't like something that's being said, they can stay away. But we should recognize that that's a very minor part of it. The major part is the closing off of options for people who are critical at the dissenting side from the overwhelming consensus at the university and outside.
Science is corrupt, or rather it's become corrupt because it's owned. It's not a free system of inquiry anymore, if it ever was, because scientists are owned by corporations. And corporations, the people who control the scientists, the people who control science, have a specific outcome, a specific conclusion in mind. And so they pay people to get that conclusion. So we're not getting the real answers because science is owned by the elites, and we're not getting the genuine truth because science is controlled by money and power.